Hi, and welcome back to a new video. So today I'm going to be analyzing and reviewing a very special kind of book. If you follow book news, you might have heard about S the Book. Conceived by director J.J. Abrams, who's worked on shows such as Lost and many other TV shows and movies, and actually written by Doug Dorst, S the Book is special because it's not just a normal book, it's actually two books in one. And it comes with almost, I think, 27 inserts as well. So I'm a library person, but this is definitely a book that I think you should buy if you were considering reading it. From the library, it comes like this. It has this box, and inside of the box is the actual book called Ship of Theseus. So S the Book is the whole book as a package, which includes kind of the outer book, Ship of Theseus, it includes the margin notes, and it includes the separate inserts, which, because I got this from the library, it comes in a separate bag. So the actual book looks like this. It comes looking worn. It's not just worn because it's been used before, and this adds to the whole experience of reading a book within a book. You can see on the back pages, these are not actual library dates. These come with the book, and we go somewhere near the front page. Yeah, so you can see that like other V.M. Straka books are here, and I'll put an insert later. But you can see that also here, it's kind of mimicking the experience of as if you picked this up from a book bin and you can see that someone stole this from a high school library or something. But overall, it's a very unique book. And if you do buy it, I think the inserts come like slipped within the book on the pages where you're supposed to read them. So I think it adds to the experience as well, but it's definitely worth buying it. I think it's beautifully crafted and it adds to the experience as a whole because you get to have your own physical copy. Getting more into detail about the parts. So in the Ship of Theseus, we read about the main character S. And S is this guy who's woken up, he has no memories of his life before, and he meets a woman and immediately gets kidnapped and goes on kind of a journey around his world. We then also have the story of V.M. Straka, who is the author of the Ship of Theseus. And we read about kind of his political writing group that he was a part of through Jen and Eric's notes. So Jen and Eric are the two people whose correspondence we read in the marginality of the book. So we can see their handwriting in different colors, and we can see kind of their thought process and their research on V.M. Straka and on the book's contents. We can also see them kind of getting to know each other and falling in love. And so within, I guess, the actual book itself and the outer margin book and all their notes that they pass back and forth with each other in the research, we kind of get these 7.5, I would say, timelines or point of views to look at. So the first point of view is obviously that of S, the main character of the book itself. So we get to see S's thought process, his decisions, his confusion at what's going on, and then his kind of acceptance of his role in the storyline. We then get the perspective of the footnotes in the foreword. So FX Caldera is the hypothetical person who, or fictional person I guess I would say, who wrote the footnotes. So she, in the fictional world of Straka, was actually Straka's editor at one point, and she was in love with him as well. So we get kind of her secret notes to him because as a political writer, Straka was very much in danger, and Caldera was also being stalked and hunted at one point. So we have in the footnotes, we have all these secret hidden messages that Jen and Eric are trying to decode. And then also we get the whole perspective through Jen and Eric's notes about this political writing world. We see how S, the group, now not S, the person of the storyline, but S, the writers group, how it developed, how it grew, how the people interacted with each other. We're uncovering the storyline, and it provides a sense of mystery, as if we're there with Jen and Eric reading all of this alongside them. So these are 3 of the main ones, and I said 7.5, so the remaining 4.5 storylines are relating to Jen and Eric. So the half one I would say is in gray pencil handwriting. You can see that Eric, like for an example on page 105, we have this right here. These are Eric's notes from when he was in high school. They're very minimal, they're sprinkled here and there throughout the book, and it's not very detailed, not very that it's not that interesting, but we can see kind of where Eric was coming from. So he underlines things that he finds interesting, so certain funny quotes or quotes that he can relate to. He also puts a few notes on things like, oh, appearance versus reality, and picking out themes and subjects that Straka explores. So I think if you're reading Ship of Theseus for the sake of like literary analysis, then these gray pencil notes are probably the most helpful to you, I would say. Next, we have Jen writing in blue ink and Eric writing in black ink. So the way Jen and Eric's story evolves is Eric, he leaves this book in the library where Jen works at, and she picks it up because it's a new foreign book. And she reads through it and falls in love with the story itself. She finds it so interesting, and so she responds back to his comments with her own margin comments, and then she leaves it back where she found it. The next day, Eric picks up the book and realizes that someone's read his book. And so rather than, I don't know, not putting the book there again, he reads through it, responds to her comments with his own margin comments, and leaves it back there. And they have this back and forth going on from that moment on, where they kind of read the book and respond to each other. And it's really kind of wholesome. It's how their relationship develops and grows. So originally, we have Jen in blue and Eric in black ink, and this is where it all begins. I would say this is not my favorite section of their writing because it's very much like neat, cute, they're getting to know each other. Eric is kind of standoffish, he's not the most engaging character, but he definitely grows on me over time. The second timeline within Jen and Eric is Jen being in this orangey yellow ink and Eric being in green ink. So during this time, things are picking up. We're figuring more about the actual plot line, so there's a lot more research being uncovered, and Jen is pushing for them to meet each other finally in person, so we see a lot of that as well. The next stage on the timeline after that is Jen being in purple ink and Eric being in red ink. So during this time, things are really picking up. There's a lot of danger in the research, a lot of I guess both of them are feeling very alone because they can't communicate their ideas to anyone other than each other, but they can't even meet up with each other without fear of being hunted or tracked, especially since Eric is like disgraced and he's not allowed to be seen on campus. So it's a lot of mystery, a lot of fear, and a lot, like you can feel their nerves and you can see their kind of thoughts written out on the paper. So it's a really different kind of view. It's also fantastic. It's my favorite perspective to read. And then finally, near the end of the book, you start seeing both Jen and Eric writing in black ink. And so this is after everything is blown over, all the action of their lives has passed, and they're finally together in person. And they're kind of using the book as a little bit of a nostalgic factor where they can talk to each other in person, but they're using the book just to have kind of the memories of where they started. So I like that one a lot as well. So with all these 7 perspectives, you might be wondering, where do I start? Personally, I read it through all the way in one shot. I read like Ship of Theseus, and when I reached a paragraph, I read the margins as they came, and I read the footnotes as if I was reading a normal book with footnotes. So I know a lot of people recommend like reading one chapter at a time, just the actual book contents, and then going back and reading the margin notes for that chapter, and then the footnotes for that chapter, something like that. But I personally believe that the book was written for you to read it as if it was a normal book with margins, to read it in line, because A, you can tell by the frequency of these different timelines of their writing that they start off by showing a lot more of the beginning meet cute stuff, and then it picks up. So you don't get any major spoilers, but it's written in a way that it's a mystery book, and I think that's what it's meant to be. Because at the end you get a lot of those like both having black text margin notes. You can tell that that's how the storyline evolves naturally. But it's very well written in that sense, and I think reading it in line as you go is the best way to read it, because then you don't have to go back and reread anything, and you're not going to forget any details, because a lot of what they talk about in their margin notes support some of the ideas and the concepts in the Ship of Theseus book itself, which you wouldn't know because you don't know any of the history of VM Straka or anything the first time you read it through. Now, one thing I wanted to add is definitely this book is very rereadable because of how many things there are going on in here. Your first time through, you want to absorb as much as you can, and you can do that by reading it all the way through. But your second or third time, you can focus on reading just the Ship of Theseus because you already know the context and history that goes behind everything. So now doing a more specific in-depth review of the Ship of Theseus itself. It reads like a classic, like one of those Penguin classic books. It gives me big like Invisible Man vibes, and I would say a little bit of Count of Monte Cristo, Gulliver's Travels. It's very kind of classically written, and it follows a lot of the same themes. I would say as a book, it's not the most exciting. It does have a little bit of mystery, so it follows S, the main character, who wakes up in a strange world where he doesn't remember anything. No, barely has any signs of his past. He doesn't know who he is as a person. And he meets this woman, and then suddenly he's being kidnapped and put on this ship of Theseus, with a bunch of strange sailors. Excuse me. So he wakes up. He's taken to this weird boat with weirder sailors, and he kind of goes to this land. They take him to this land where he figures out a plot of the evil Vevdovar, I think that's how you pronounce it, and kind of follows his journey as he goes and he attacks this higher power, this big evil corporation guy. I think as a book, it's interesting, but it's not the most novel in terms of its ideas. Like I think it makes some conclusions on, I guess, the power of writing, on human nature, on appearance versus reality, and makes statements on evil. But none of these are like particularly profound, and they're not particularly new in their ideas. I think it's very just standard, but overall, it's a really good book, and I think the context of the fact that the ship of Theseus reflects V.M. Straka's world, and as we figure out who V.M. Straka was, we kind of learn more about how the ship of Theseus is a vessel for S, not the corporation, excuse me, S, the writing group. So we get a lot more of that. So I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but I think overall I would say this is a 3 out of 5 for me as a book, but definitely worth reading. So then we get to Jen and Eric's story. Jen is a graduating senior in college. She is kind of confused about what she wants to do with her degree. She doesn't really feel like she has a passion in what she's studying anymore. And after reading Straka for the first time, she falls in love with the concept. She falls in love with the chase, the idea. She's really, really intelligent. She's good at kind of research, library research, and at cracking codes. And she's immediately pulled into kind of this world of mystery and kind of explaining what's going on in here. She loves this stuff. Eric, on the other hand, is a disgraced grad student who is totally madly obsessed with Straka. In fact, at the beginning, he was very like one-track minded about that, but we can see his character development as things go on, where he becomes like more open to Jen's ideas, and he realizes that maybe just focusing on the actual content of the book isn't enough. You have to consider the whole view of like who was he as a person too. So I think definitely we see these two characters as they get to meet each other, grow, and we see their academic and literary sides as well. As characters, I liked Jen. She was pretty normal, average. There's nothing spectacular about her. Eric, I did not like Eric at first. I thought he was pretentious, but he definitely grew on me and on Jen as we see his character develop. And then finally, so I would say actually before I finish that section, I think the story of Jen and Eric really carries this book because it adds a lot of the context to Ship of Theseus. It adds a little bit of a fun romantic layer on top of the technical book parts. I think as characters, they have a lot of angst in their lives that makes it engaging to read, but it's not like too negative. And it adds a little bit more mystery as well because Jen and Eric are being hunted for their like academic ideas. So it's also that side of things. So it's very, I think, it brings everything up a level. So I would give this maybe an 8 out of 10. And so finally, to finish it off, the book as a whole is very unique. It's different than a lot of other books that I've read. And it's because of this kind of 2 books in one, along with these inserts, which are just Jen and Eric's notes and research papers and parts of their research documents and stuff. So I'd say this is, as a book, an 8 out of 10. I think the main features are, it's a unique concept and it's very well done for what it is. I think you get the sense of mystery without having it be really obvious or really confusing. It's as both the writing of the book, it's well made, and I think the characters develop themselves pretty well. At least Jen and Eric do. I think my favorite part about this is that it really pays homage to kind of the art of writing a book. As like a physical book, it's stunningly made. It's like you can't even tell at some points whether it's like actual writing, like handwriting, or if it's just printed. Like that's how well, like you can see little imperfections in their script and everything. Like one of the inserts is actually napkin paper. It's an actual napkin with like handwriting on it, as if someone um, was making this at like a coffee shop and they stuck that into the book. It's really well crafted, and it just lends itself so well to rereading. It kind of really just reminds you how good having a physical book is, and it makes you really love reading with physical books. And it has such a great rereadability factor because there's so much more to discover every time you reread this book. And then finally, what I like about this book is that there's a whole community surrounding it. So just like how FX Caldera left footnote messages in Secret Codes to Straka, I believe that the authors, Abrams endorsed that they left notes to us because, okay, here's my theory. So there are these random letters in the footnotes that are like randomly raised, and I think if you do something with them, then you get some sort of secret message. I haven't followed up on that theory. I'm still trying to crack it. But if you do, let me know, or if that's already been discovered, let me know down below in the comments. But there's a huge community out there that's there, like documenting all the crazy things that people find, and I think the authors play into it as well because they're like leaving messages on their official Twitter handle. So I'll link some resources down below where you can kind of follow more of the cryptography side and kind of the real world lore of the book. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you definitely give this book a try. It's worth it to buy it, and I would say it's a great read. Even if you don't end up liking it, I think it's definitely worth having just had the experience of reading a book that's kind of like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!